Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Stuart Allen Swerdlow.
And Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow.
And this is the Expansions News Podcast for Easter week of April 2020, which is actually almost the second week, I guess. It is the second week. It's the second week, yeah. And so, my goodness, I don't even know if we should bother doing podcasts anymore because every story on the news is the same thing. Coronavirus causes the death of 4 billion people. There was a car accident caused by coronavirus. A plant leaf fell off caused by coronavirus. And someone had an eyelash in their eye, which was caused by coronavirus. So, of course, that's the fake news media. And so I will do my best to give you some news that has maybe some kind of interest to it.
I have fascinating stories.
Yes, but they're all about you-know-what. So anyway, according to Vice President Pence and U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr, China poses the biggest threat to America and is waging a full-court blitzkrieg against the United States. And that's according to Bill Barr. And of course, China has been coming under fire from many different angles because of The Attorney General said that he thinks China is the biggest threat across the board, and across the ocean too, I might add. And criticism of Beijing and its officials because of its wrong or purposely covered up reporting of the COVID-19 cases. The Attorney General said that China is a bigger threat than Russia, geopolitically, economically, militarily, and a threat to the integrity of our institutions.
Maybe the last name is Lee. Mm-hmm. Is that a politically incorrect joke?
No, that's very racist.
That's what I thought.
As far as I'm concerned. And by the way...
That's because I got it from reading your mind. L-I.
You can't read my mind because...
There's nothing there?
I don't have a mind. I don't have a mind.
Yeah, you're right. I can see all the way through.
You are...
I can see all the way through.
Socially not distancing from me and causing me possible harm.
I can see it.
So if anything happens to me, you know what they're going to say. Mm-hmm. And now it's on camera that because you were too close to me and you may have related distant coronavirus issues from your childhood.
I think that's it.
Mm-hmm. They said that China has been doing very aggressively, has been acting very aggressively over the last decade to try to gain control of those by electing people to the top. It already controls 5 of the 15. I don't understand this really. 5 of the 15 what? It doesn't really say. Colonial-like proxies. It doesn't really go into that.
It doesn't say what the proxies are.
It actually does name one of them, who is Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, who's at the WHO?
He's the head of the WHO.
Who?
Yeah, I have information on him.
You do have it? Well, you
and
better
it
tell the press.
Ties it right into China.
No.
Yes.
I don't like that. I don't like Mr.
information.
Tedros Ghebreyesus.
I don't
His
like
Jesus
or dislike.
in his name.
I don't like or dislike.
And according to this information, they have absolutely enormously suppressed the human-to-human transmission data that they refuse to call, and they refuse to call it a pandemic. They also said the United Nations Health Group director said it was necessary to ban travelers coming from China when the coronavirus started spreading. Trump has followed the lead of prominent conservatives in complaining that the WHO has been too friendly to China during the coronavirus crisis. The WHO really blew it, he said on Twitter. For some reason, funded largely by the United States, yet very China-centric. He's talking about the WHO. And we'll be giving that a good look. According to the latest news, they're going to pull all the funding to the WHO, which I agree should be done.
And I'm going to tell you why.
I already know why, because I just said it why.
I'm going to tell you
Vice President Mike
details.
Pence also weighed in on Hannity last night, or whenever this was written, warning that the administration would ask tough questions of the WHO, find out what the WHO is going on. Now, the World Health Organization has been criticized for not pushing China to clarify its response and question its numbers on the disease, and there is skepticism about the numbers Beijing is. Why would anyone think that China would report accurate numbers about anything going on in China? Why would that even be a question? Because China is completely under the control of the deep state, at least it has been. And guess who makes money from them? The Bidens, the Clintons, Pelosi, Schiff, Schumer, all receive large amounts of money from China, and China has basically bought the Democratic Party of the United States. Hence, its lean towards the left and communism and socialism. Now, speaking of the WHO, I have a really horrendous story. Dr. Michael Ryan, who serves as executive director of the World Health Organization Health Emergencies Program, is ready to take the coronavirus emergency measures to the next level. He wants to invade people's homes and take their loved ones in order to protect the public health.
I have that story.
Yeah, in most parts of the world, due to lockdown, he says, most of the transmission that's actually happening in many countries now is happening in the household at family level. In some senses, transmission has been taken off the streets and pushed back into the family units. Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them in a safe and dignified, drag them out of their house in a safe and dignified manner.
That's what they were showing in China. And the other thing, which a lot of people may or may not know, but during all this that's going on, if you take somebody to the hospital, you can't go in with them. Only they can go themselves. Mm-hmm. So, so people who maybe need to go aren't going because they don't want to risk their loved ones being left to the system without anybody to watch over them.
And probably kill them and say it was coronavirus.
Right.
Ryan is just one of the many scientists who has no respect for civil liberties, private property, and basic human rights. They're capitalizing on the coronavirus pandemic and using it as a way to push authoritarian globalism. And I think someone needs to take Mr. Ryan out of his home and straight to prison along with his boss, Mr. Gates and Mr. Soros. And I think if they ever tried that in the United States, they would be very sorry. Because guess what? We got guns.
Well, that's why people are out buying guns right now.
Yes, you come take my children, come to my house, you're going to be very sorry. You will be dying, but not from coronavirus. Anyway, early indications. Now, this is a story from Britain. I mean, this is why Britain lost the empire. I want you to listen to this idiocy. Early indications suggest that more men are dying from the COVID-19 than women, although some countries, including the UK, are not publishing data on this because they don't know how to get data. Data. It might be because men and women have different immune systems and that men's immune systems may not activate in the same way as women's to fight the virus. So in other words, if you get stabbed by a knife and I get stabbed by a knife, we're going to react differently? I don't think so. For the start, men are more likely to have underlying health problems relevant to COVID-19. In other words, they can use more possibilities to fudge their death certificates, such as high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, and chronic lung disease, because women don't have that, only men do. And it also is because men are more likely to engage in risky behavior like smoking, drinking, and drug taking, because women would never do that, only men do that.
They say men do it more often, according to the study.
Really?
I don't
Hang
know.
out at a bar sometimes once they open and see what happens. Research, I want to know who did the research, also seems to indicate that some men may take personal hygiene, such as hand washing, less seriously than women. This could be due to the fact that cleanliness is often associated with femininity, domesticity, and beautification.
I think this is from the 1920s.
Yeah, I think this was written by a moron. Here's the moron, Caroline Criado Perez, who also pointed out that because most medical research focuses on male bodies, I don't think so. There is a lack of understanding about why women may be better able to fend off this virus. Well, that's why I see all these women listed as dead from the virus. Men also tend to socialize more in groups in public. Have you ever heard of female gossip? And social distancing is less serious, takes them less seriously. It's such BS, honestly. And also, get this, they may find it difficult to accept that they need help because it's unmanly. I shan't need help, it's unmanly. I shall die alone.
They didn't even mention how filthy your beards are. You're supposed to shave
Oh,
them.
here's a better one.
Did they mention the beards?
Older men in particular are more likely to experience loneliness and social isolation. Half our clients are females who are lonely and isolated, and this could put them at increased risk of mental health problems. Listen to me. Everybody out there has a mental health problem, especially in Britain. I should say England. And also, they want to assert more dominance and control over their partners and children. I think, have they ever had a Jewish mother? For many women and children, now you should listen to this. For many women and children, the home is the most dangerous place to be. Are you feeling dangerous in your home?
No, that can be for women and children.
The UK's National Domestic Abuse Helpline has seen a 25% increase in calls since the lockdown began. I'm sorry, it's because they're probably driving the men crazy. And the highlights how quarantine compound domestic and sexual abuse. Listen, if you're an abusive person, it doesn't matter if you're locked down or free, you're abusive. You're not going to become abusive because you're locked down.
But the other thing is, if you're being abused, this is a sign to get out of your relationship.
They should get out of the house.
Get out of the relationship.
Yeah.
Period.
Now here's one that you will appreciate. Porn sites have seen an increased traffic, and some are offering free access during lockdown.
And why do I appreciate this?
Because
I'm on the porn sites all the time.
I've seen
and
you.
I get free access now.
I think that's where you get most of your stories.
Thank you for telling me.
Yeah, and it could contribute to a rise in online harassment and sexual abuse. Listen, if a man or a woman are going to go on a porn site, they don't give a damn if they're locked up or not, okay? Britain, seriously, this is why you've lost your entire empire. This is why they're effed up in Britain. Seriously. There's a danger that as with previous crises, government support will prioritize industries seen as strongest for the economy and dominated by men who are abusive and sexually harassing.
Watching porn sites. Such
as aviation, car production, and construction, because no women are in those industries whatsoever.
Apparently not.
Honest Lord. Is it a wonder the aliens want to take over? So they're going to increase...
I think they changed their minds.
Yeah, I think they left. They're going to increase funding for services to help those at risk of domestic and sexual abuse. This will not only help to encourage men to play their part, but it will go some way towards shifting harmful gender norms in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the British plan to feminize males because they're stupid and dangerous, and support females to be like men so they can't be abused anymore.
Yeah, and I have a
story about brilliant plan.
I have a story about that too.
What a brilliant plan. Now, here's another thing to pay attention to. On March 1st, there were only 88 confirmed cases of coronavirus in the United States. But by the end of the month, there was 170,000.
Another 8. 1 plus 7 is an 8.
Yeah, and that's according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, another wonderful organization. Why did it go up? Because they are fudging death certificates and making people who have a hangnail. Well, that comes from coronavirus. Now, 90% of hospitalized patients that were in this study had one or more underlying medical conditions. That's what they really have. Older people, like yourself, infected with the virus were more likely to be hospitalized. Men were more likely to endure severe cases than women. Well, hello, I thought they just said before that men don't pay attention to it and don't get treated. Controversy here. And here's for the Democrats. And black people were hospitalized at a higher rate than whites.
That means they were getting better health care then, according to what they're saying.
Exactly.
Right? Not worse, but better.
The study also found that hospitalization rates for COVID-19 had been significantly higher than for the recent outbreaks of influenza. That's because you scare the crap out of everybody, and every time they sneeze, they think they have the disease.
And they say diarrhea is one of the, it could be a symptom.
Really? Because I heard it was not a symptom.
They said it could be.
You know what? Breathing is a symptom.
Yes. So that's why if they scare the crap
Oh,
out of you,
my
then they
God.
can diagnose
Nurse,
you.
this man is breathing. He has the
They
virus.
can diagnose you as COVID.
Get him a ventilator so we can kill him faster and write on his death certificate that he died from the virus. The data was based on hospitalizations from March 1 to 30th and was taken from network hospitals in only parts of 14 states. So that means 36 other states, they didn't look at them, but they made up these things. But they included New York, Connecticut, California, and Ohio, which were seen as representative snapshots of the virus. I don't think so. I mean, I don't think people in Wyoming or New Mexico or Georgia or Tennessee would be included in that snapshot. The cases were expected to increase considerably as the virus continues to spread and testing becomes more real. Yeah, it spreads considerably because now the 80% false positive means more people can have the diagnosis in a false way.
And they stick that thing up your nose. Have you seen that test?
No, they're not
It's
sticking
terrible.
anything up any part of my body.
Me neither. That's horrible.
No. The only thing I'm sticking up my mouth is a glass of vodka, and that's the end of that. Of the hospitalized COVID-19 patients in the CDC study, 89.3% had underlying medical conditions. 89%, over 89%, had other conditions which were killing them, including hypertension, which was in half the patients, followed by obesity, chronic metabolic disease like diabetes, chronic lung disease like asthma, and cardiovascular disease like heart attacks. Gee, you had a heart attack, but you looked at a picture of the virus related. In terms of age and gender, almost 75% of the patients were 50 or older, and over half were male. But I thought men didn't care about their, so it doesn't make sense to me. And, oh, here's something. It said that the findings would need to be confirmed by more data. Yeah, like the truth. How about true data? Data. What's the difference? It's an ah sound.
People don't say data anymore.
They don't?
No. They don't know what that is.
When
Dada.
I
It
learned-
sounds like dada, mama, dada.
When I learned English, it was data.
Yes, me too, but they don't say that anymore. When I learned English, we also called it dada, but they do not say that anymore. Now people don't know what dada is. Like I said, dada, mama, dada.
Well, what's the
That's what it
difference?
sounds like.
You know, you are again microaggressing me, and again too close for the distancing. Anyway, these are false positive tests. The higher numbers of these cases, the media is pushing these false images and of the deaths and the hospitals. And again, I have posted this videos to my people.
Yeah, people.
United States, other countries, they have driven past hospitals that they said people were waiting on. Empty. Parking lot, empty. Waiting room, empty. What's going on, people? Now, where I used to live, Long Island area, yeah.
I still lived there too once.
You did, but briefly because they didn't want you. They said,
Yep.
we don't really
I
care for
didn't
your,
want them.
we don't care for your kind around here.
I didn't care for their kind.
Yeah, so it was mutual. Anyway, and this is why men,
Cry.
we get
Correct.
abusive in the lockup. The epicenter of a magnitude 3.0 earthquake was recorded 33 miles southeast of Southampton, New York this past week, which is, guess what? Underneath Montauk area, near the Montauk base. And in January, a 4.7 magnitude earthquake was reported off the coast of Ocean City, Maryland, also just south of Montauk area. See, something's going on with these underground bases, more underground explosions, etc. And you should also know, and here's something people you should know, we have had a lot of sabotage this week. My computer several times lost internet while yours did not. Maybe you are the saboteur.
Maybe. Saboteurs.
Have you ever heard of one computer in the house losing internet and the others not? And also, most of my links that I had saved vanished.
Maybe that's why I have so many stories.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe you're a Chinese agent is what I think. Anyway, what I had I had wanted to tell everybody is that the volcano Krakatoa in Indonesia, which caused that nuclear winter 200 years ago, guess what? It's erupting now. Iceland volcano near the Keflavik airport are starting. Oh yes, and they said if it erupts, bye airport, bye. Yeah, you're not going anywhere anyway. Believe me.
I want to go.
You're not. You have to fly with your own wings. Anyway, fireballs were seen over Central Europe. I lost that link. And UFOs over Michigan.
Well, that's not unusual for here.
I know, but they were over Detroit, and there was a lot of them. And there have been Q posts that says that we should not assume or make, what's that word?
Assumptions.
Data word. It's a data word. Not assumption, but
Calculate.
misinterpret. Misinterpret their clues because people said this Easter weekend, blah, blah, was happening. But we should know that on Good Friday, there were at least 6 subpoenas filed in courts in Washington, D.C. against the evil ones. And so on that note, I would like to wish everyone happy Passover and happy Easter. And then I leave it now to you.
So I have lots of really good stories.
Yeah, and I wonder if they're all about coronavirus.
They're kinda, but they're very good. Because the thing is, like we tell you, you have to make up your own mind about what's going on. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people living in a lot of fear out there.
And they don't have their own minds.
So what we're doing is we're teaching you to get your own mind, collect your facts, and no fear out there. Because fear is what lowers your frequency and makes you sick. So part of this is, of course, make you aware of this fake news things. And it's interesting because CBS News posted a video of a nurse who claims she quit her job after being asked to work in a coronavirus ICU without a mask. Now, instead of verifying the legitimacy of the video, CBS added background music and captions to highlight the woman who lied about her workplace situation. However, prior to CBS doing this, she did post on her public Facebook page that she has anxiety, bipolar depression, and had not been an employee at the hospital for over a year. She also said that the coronavirus triggers her. Now, after she did all of this, so she kind of did say, that I'm not a nurse, but then she posted this video. CBS ran it, and then Bernie Sanders picked it up.
Bernie Gutman
He retweeted
Sanders.
the video, and he called on the Department of Labor to issue emergency workplace standards based on this woman's testimony, which she herself said was false.
But did he go like this when he was talking?
I don't know. But anyway, so this is my point. There's so much out there, and I spent so much time this week sifting through things.
You did?
I did.
That's why we had no food.
Yeah, that's right. Like we don't need any food, right? So anyway, so that was very interesting to me. Then, apparently in Utah, Governor Herbert issued an order this past week requiring everyone who enters Utah by automobile or by truck by a major roadway to complete a travel declaration form.
So then they were sneaking through a side road.
You can't.
Sure you can. There's a million of them.
How would you know?
It's Utah.
When the vehicle comes to a stop, the driver has to go to a website, fills out a self-declaration form. Then the form asks if the individual was tested for coronavirus, the results of the test, if they're experiencing any symptoms.
Right.
Then it wants basic information about the driver, where the driver's been. This is like going to a foreign country.
Yeah, and so who's going to police this?
And then it says the driver will receive a confirmation email that they have complied. They want to know about anybody traveling with the driver under 18 years of age. And also inbound passengers at Salt Lake International will have to do the same thing.
That's not going to make too much of a backlog.
But it's very interesting to me that they're, like I said to me, this is a police state now.
Who wants to go to Utah anyway?
Well,
It's,
But so they're testing this out, obviously. Now you're talking about states not being on lockdown. Wyoming is not on lockdown.
No, let's move there.
Nor is South Dakota. And their governor, who's a woman, said our Constitution ensures that citizens' rights are protected. I agree with the role of our government as set forth in our state and in our national Constitution. I took an oath to uphold these constitutions.
She should talk to our governor, wretched Gretchen.
I have a story about her later.
Ugh.
So she said she's making her decisions based on principles and common sense. And did you know that the U.S. now has stopped issuing passports except for life or death emergencies? And in Sweden, Sweden is also refusing to be on lockdown.
Good for them. It's my family.
She said no. The foreign minister gave in this interview said that no lockdown. We rely very much on people taking responsibility for themselves, which is what we tell you to do.
They're Vikings.
Take care of your immune system. Listen, if you don't feel well, don't go out.
Except
it's common sense.
They let all the immigrants in.
Common sense.
Maybe they want to kill the immigrants.
That's why.
why.
That could be. And here, back in the U.S., Dr. Deborah Birx, the response coordinator for the White House Coronavirus Task Force, said the federal government is continuing to count the suspected COVID-19 deaths, despite other nations doing the opposite. So, in other words, if it's suspected that it's a COVID-19 death, no test.
Her friend Fauci.
No tests, but suspected, which I'll tell you more about that later, is being counted as a death, which is why our death rates are so high. So we've both been saying
that's why there's 100,000, million people having it, because they, if your eyelash is this way, you got to have the virus.
And the point here with my stories is that people are now questioning it publicly, not just
They should.
Absolutely.
Question.
Alex Davis, who is a business executive and director of several companies in New Zealand and overseas, wrote an article and offered his opinion piece to the New Zealand Herald and other newspapers there, who all declined to publish it because he titled it, "Is it possible that COVID-19 is not as bad as we are being told?"
Right.
And he speculates they may not have published the article because they are afraid of not towing the government line. Now, of course, you didn't exactly mention it, but this is all over the internet. I'm sure you've probably seen it. COVID-19 COVID certificate of vaccination ID, and Bill Gates.
Yeah, that's Mr. Gates.
Well, AG Barr is very concerned about personal liberty after Bill Gates proposed digital vaccine certificates. Bill Gates said, quote, "Eventually we will have some digital certificates to show who has recovered or been tested recently, or when we have a vaccine, who has received it."
No, we will not have that, Bill Gates, because you're going to jail.
And Attorney General Bill Barr said he was very concerned about the slippery slope in terms of continuing encroachments on personal liberty.
That's right.
Let's see. And Ron Paul, former GOP Representative Ron Paul, calls on Trump to fire advisor Fauci.
Yeah, and arrest him.
He's a fraud, doesn't give good information,
Right.
and is trying to have total control over the people.
Yeah, look at the pictures he took with Obama and Clinton and all that, and
Bill Gates and Bill Gates' father.
Yeah, he's in their pocket.
And remember, Bill Gates' father was the head of Planned Parenthood. So Bill Gates didn't just sit in his garage, this college dropout, lowly college dropout, and discover Microsoft.
Too bad his mother didn't have an abortion with him.
No, let's not say that.
Well, that's
not
true.
Nice. Well, it's
He's
not
evil.
Nice. Well, if it wasn't him, it would be somebody else. So Ron Paul says Fauci provided bad information, and guess what? Fauci lowered his death estimates
to 60,000.
from 100,000 to 60,000.
From 200,000
down to 60,000. He called Fauci a fraud, and that Ron Paul, who is actually a medical doctor, has called the deadly flu-like virus a big hoax.
Yes.
And he's 84 now, has run for 3 presidential campaigns.
Listen to me. Right now, there's been like 18 or 19,000 deaths in the United States, which we know are exaggerated. In a normal year, 60,000 people die from the flu, but no one ever mentions that over the years.
We have been telling you that on our podcast.
I'm just saying, so how come the flu's not a pandemic, but this is?
Well, this
when
is our point.
Over 3 times as many die from the flu, and that's not a pandemic.
And people are getting disturbed. Now here, there's a senator, again, a practicing physician, Scott Jensen, Republican from Minnesota. He said that he had a CDC guidance that gives doctors the authority to include, quote, suspected or likely cases of COVID-19 on death certificates.
Right.
This document was sent to him by the Minnesota Department of Health, suggesting that he could include a diagnosis of COVID-19 on death certificates, even if there were no official lab results confirming the diagnosis.
Exactly.
In Tennessee, the Tennessee National Sentinel said that they're skeptical about the severity of the pandemic since the beginning. And they said they don't know everything about it. They know it does kill and sicken, but they're not conspiracists, they're realists, and they're saying what they're seeing does not match what they're being told.
Exactly.
And they said that CDC has been purposefully inflating the coronavirus death rate, and they don't know why, and they're saying, can any government statistics on the COVID deaths be trusted?
No.
So, and he's talking, and this is also all over the internet. There is a physician, Dr. Annie Bukacek from Maryland. Oh no, she's a medical doctor, sorry, from Montana.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, but she had an MD, and I was reading, I thought that was where she was from. So
I
Montana
think all
is
people who are
MD.
MDs live in Maryland.
Yeah, but she's from Montana. So she's been all over the internet talking about it. Stephen Schwartz, director of the Division of Vital Statistics for the National Center for Health Statistics, sent out an alert, said the assumption of COVID-19 deaths can be made even without testing.
Right.
Based on assumption alone, the death can be reported to the public as another
Yeah.
COVID-19 casualty.
They probably say, "Did you hear about the COVID-19 on the news?" "Yes, I did." "You must have it. It's on your
But they're telling people now, and it's coming from these sources, CDC. Now remember, there's always layers upon layers, which we are in the process of telling you. So listen carefully to this. Because, again, we have George Soros, another Soros story here. George Soros' Open Society Foundation has given the Brennan Center's has been the Brennan Center's largest funder, which gave the center over $7 million from 2000 to 2010. Now, the Brennan Center for Justice, which is a New York University Law School and Public Policy Institute, submitted a letter to the governors of all 50 states, urging them to use executive motion to release as many men and women as possible from incarceration due to coronavirus fears. So in other words, they want to flood our streets with criminals. So they sent this to these people, and they're claiming that their study shows that older people are not they won't have the
Recidivity.
I was going to find the word here. Recidivism, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Repeat means the repeat.
I know what it means. I was just trying to recidivism. There we go. So this is what they're sending to the governors of all 50 states. Now, this is
our governor can't read, so it's not going to help her.
I'll have a story about that later on. You got to hold your horses and sit
can't.
tight because it's a very
My
exciting
horse is left.
story. So this was funded by Soros. Okay, now Soros also funds a media called Open Democracy. And in that Open Democracy, there was an op-ed piece titled, "The Coronavirus Crisis Shows It's Time to Abolish the Family." This was written by Sophie Lewis.
Really?
Yes, she claims that she's questioning whether patriarchal parenting and marriage can benefit health, and she advocates illegally seizing unoccupied properties, and then she wants to release the patients and mental health facilities, prisons, and refugee camps.
She must be related to that guy at the WHO.
They are. They're all under Soros' control, and that's what I'm going to tell you about as we move along here.
That someone should arrest Soros and torture him mercilessly.
Her solution is to house these people in hotels and private homes, which she refers to as private palaces. Now, so what's interesting is in New York, they're already releasing these people, and they're already putting them up in hotels and doing exactly what's being said here.
What?
Yes, by Soros. She says this author continues that the private family genders, nationalizes, and races us. Well, yeah, because it's our family. We know what our gender is, and we know what our race is. It norms us for productive work. It makes us believe we're individuals. Like that's a bad thing.
What a surprise.
And then it goes on, we deserve better than the family, and the time of corona is an excellent time to practice abolishing it. This is from Soros.
Listen to me. She needs to be executed. I don't care if
It's
that sounds
from
bad or not.
Soros.
She needs to be executed instantly.
This is all from Soros.
And then burned, so nothing of her body remains.
So, now you already had kind of touched this topic, and I didn't want to go too deep into it because it's rather lengthy, but Donald Trump announces hold on World Health Organization funding.
Good.
So you started
They
that.
should be also eliminated.
Now, who's the head of the WHO? This Dr. Tedros.
Where the
you
hell he
mentioned.
come from?
That's what I'm going to tell you.
His last name of Jesus.
He was born in Asmara, Eritrea.
Yeah.
Okay, and Lawrence Gostin, who's a professor of global health law at Georgetown University Law School, said about Tedros, he's very political, there's no question.
You think?
He's a career politician who worked for a communist junta and became WHO's first non-doctor director general following intense lobbying from Beijing.
How could he be that when he's not a doctor?
Bill Gates is also the one who funds the WHO, who I've got in here as well.
I wish I could round
And
them
I'm
up
going to tell you
let
why.
me have 10 minutes with all
I
of
have
them.
a link if you're really interested to find out who Tedros is, but I will tell you, he wound up being the Director General of the WHO as a result of intense lobbying from Beijing, and Beijing gave his country many millions of dollars after his appointment, and I have it all chronologically here in my article, which you can read if you want to
So
look it up.
Beijing just buys creeps and demons
And before,
and pulls their puppet strings.
yes, before Tedros was head of the WHO, Eritrea was only being given $350,000 from China. Until the year 2000. After that, China made donations, and this is just what we know about, 16 million in 2016, in 2011, 44 million.
That's just what they're telling you.
2017, that's my point. So anyway, he was, that's well funded from Beijing and it's documented. And before that, we had a Canadian-Chinese physician.
Well, that's a combo.
So there you have it. Now, interestingly enough, he cites, his bio, who he is, and blah, blah. So this particular news source contacted the University of London and University of Nottingham to check on the biographical information of Dr. Tedros. But guess what? They didn't get a response. And if he came from there, I would think he would have a fast response. So I'm saying, and they're probably afraid because of the people who are behind the WHO.
Just like Obama has no records in Columbia University.
And Trump says the U.S. would consider suspending funding to the organization until an investigation is carried out. Trump says they called it wrong, they missed the call, they should have known, they probably did know, and he suggests the WHO was withholding information about the coronavirus. And guess what? He says the WHO receives vast amounts of money from the U.S., and we pay for a majority, the biggest portion of the money.
That's coming to an end.
And he said they seem to be very China-centric. And this is why, because of funding that put this Tedros in place all came from China. And before then, the leader of it was
Remember I said last week
Chinese.
the Japanese vice president said they should be called a Chinese World Health Organization?
Yes. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Now, I've been talking about why are the Kennedys out here all of a sudden. And of course we know, unfortunately, of the niece that died. And then we found out she was an attorney and she worked for some of these health organizations, and there's implication, which I could not find anything to substantiate it. Because first of all, when they found her body, they said it was in deep water. It's like, okay, if you drown, usually you float. You don't, go down you don't sink to the bottom.
They haven't found the child.
I can't remember if they did. We've been through so much stuff. I wouldn't say for sure, but I thought they did.
Maybe they took him somewhere.
But there was some scuttlebutt out there saying that this McKean, I think was her name, that she actually was working against Gates. Okay?
Well, she had the goods on them.
Yes.
Because she worked for them.
Yes, so that's my point. So now Robert F. Kennedy is just blasting Bill Gates all over the place, saying that,
Say that part again, please.
That Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is blasting Bill Gates all over the place. And I mean, huge diatribe. So just a couple of things that I wanted to bring out is that this is one of his comments, that vaccines for Bill Gates are a strategic philanthropy that feed his many vaccine-related businesses and give him dictatorial control over global health policy. His obsession with vaccines seems fueled by a messianic conviction that he is ordained to save the world with technology and a godlike willingness to experiment with the lives of lesser humans.
Well, that's not God ordained. He's satanically.
No, this is how he feels.
Yeah, he's satanically
And
ordained.
Satan is probably his God.
Oh, yes.
Robert Kennedy also ties Dr. Fauci into the Gates controversy and says that they all stand to benefit financially, including Fauci.
Because China's paying them millions.
Well, Fauci, they have interest in it. And then there was another article titled, and I don't know if this actually came out of Robert Kennedy's mouth or not, but it says, "Is Bill Gates Satan's spawn or merely a geek gone mad and turned traitor murderer?"
Well, you knew him. What did you think of him?
I didn't know him. I had occasion to interact with him, but I did not know him.
Well, if you interacted with him, you know him.
No. It was many years ago. And then I'm going to come back to this Gates thing because it continues to go on and ties in, believe it or not, in several very interesting ways to me. But I also, speaking of the fake news, this was interesting to me because Governor Cuomo of New York issued a desperate call last month asking doctors and nurses to come to New York and help shoulder this burden of treating all these people. Oh, in fact, that reminds me, there was an article, I meant to get that, and I didn't. In Seattle, the Army went in and set up a huge field hospital.
And nobody was there.
Nobody came, and they took it down after, I don't know, a week or so, or 2 weeks.
Because there's nobody that needs these things, people.
But anyway, and
ventilators will kill you.
So Governor Cuomo said, he needed help, right? They said 90,000 doctors and nurses signed up to volunteer in New York hospitals, and only 8% of those have been assigned jobs. So if they need
They're
these
probably
people,
cleaning bathrooms.
and they said they gave, of course, a couple of interviews of people. One is a 67-year-old retired anesthesiologist. He said he approached multiple hospitals and nobody would hire him.
Because they don't need him.
And then there was an ICU nurse, a pediatric ICU nurse they interviewed. She said the same thing. She wanted to be an unpaid volunteer. And they're all saying nobody's contacting them.
Because they don't need them.
And what's interesting is they did show here in our local news a caravan of ambulances from Michigan.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened
They
to
were
them.
going to someplace from also Ohio.
Yeah. Well, anyway, and then this one is just like I
Yeah,
said.
so here's the thing. So if Michigan has the third highest rate,
Right.
why
are
are
we
they sending
sending our
ambulances
people?
elsewhere?
I know. I thought the same thing when I saw that caravan going.
We're brilliant.
And on April
Scam.
3rd, when Trump was giving a talk, he was talking, he it's a long thing, but in the middle of it, he said, and there's a transcript, I have the link, you can look it up online. He says, we're getting better very quickly. This was artificially induced.
Yes.
He said that.
That's
We just said, they said,
Listen
close
to
it
what
down.
he says.
This
because
was
he's telling
artificially
you.
induced. The very words of our own
He's
president.
telling you what's going on. And he said the other day, he says, I know what's happening, and I know what the Democrats are planning, and I know what they're going to do to sleepy Joe Biden,
Okay, so
who's
now,
completely incoherent, by the way.
back to Gates. This was also a little story out there, just a side note of interest, that there was a man, 51 years old, back in 2013 or 2015. I'm not sure of the dates, but it's been a few years ago. So anyway, he was employed as an engineer at the Gates home, and he was accused of trading pornography images via Gmail. So he was at the Gates home, and they claimed that he wasn't doing it there. He had an apartment, and while they were interviewing him at the Gates estate, 3 detectives had a search warrant for his apartment, and they found 6,000 images of graphic child porn and rape. It said 133 of those children were actually identified by the police.
Really?
Yes. And guess what? He only received 90 days in the King County Jail and 2 years of probation for 6,000 images, and 133 of which were of
Did he
porn and rape.
perhaps get them from Gates?
We don't know. We don't know.
And that's why they swept it away?
But they swept it away. And they claimed that his shorter jail term because he cared for an elderly mother.
Oh, please.
He was
They
51.
don't give a damn about those things.
No. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. And now, here's the story I've been wanting to tell you about our governor, Michigan Governor
Oh.
Gretchen Whitmer.
No, I call her Wretched Nitwitmer.
A Saginaw County attorney is suing her,
Good.
arguing she violated her authority in issuing an executive order regarding Freedom of Information Act requirements during the pandemic. On the night of Sunday, April 5th, she signed an executive order relaxing requirements for government workers responding in person to Freedom of Information Act's FOIA requests during the outbreak. The order was effective immediately and was scheduled to be lifted June 4th, according to a news release. The very next day, Hemlock-based attorney Philip L. Ellison sent a lawsuit naming Whitmer and the state of Michigan as defendants to the Michigan Court of Claims in Lansing. The concern of any time a government acts beyond its normal everyday powers and processes is that they'll abuse that power, Ellison said. Of course, in times of crisis, we have to give officials more authority than they would normally have. But when you go too far, you're actually hurting the citizenry rather than protecting them. In the suit, the attorney states that Whitmer, since March 10th, suspended or altered countless laws, regulations, legal obligations, and statutes, including the criminalizing of operations deemed non-essential, criminalizing the free movement and assembly of individuals, and suspending of schools. Additionally, state and local officials have started issuing orders further criminalizing traditional, lawful, and constitutionally protected activity. Whitmer's executive order limiting the granting of FOIA requests is, quote, drastic, unprecedented, and unauthorized
She has no right.
by the text of the Michigan Constitution.
And by federal.
He's only doing Michigan. The Michigan Constitution says nothing about Michigan's governor issuing emergency executive orders or who is in charge in an emergency to expressly suspend government transparency laws and obligations created by constitution and or statutory law.
This is because she worked for Soros. She directly works for Soros.
The suit goes on to state, the only provision dealing with continuity of government in emergencies, listen to this one, refers to disasters occurring within Michigan caused by an enemy attack on the United States. That's the only way she can do what she's
So now
doing.
she knows we're being attacked by an enemy.
Maybe. The suit also states that the state's Emergency Management Act allows the governor to issue a state of disaster or a state of emergency that expires 28 days after its issuance unless it's extended by the legislature upon the governor's request. Whitmer issued the state of emergency declaration on March 10, meaning it would expire on April 7 without the legislature extending it. Whitmer's April 5th order regarding FOIA requests that would last until June 4th thusly exceeds the authority provided to defendant Governor Gretchen Whitmer given the deadline of the 28th. He added the suit is not specifically Whitmer's stay-at-home order, but it will target and question the governor's authority to issue orders like it. Ellison goes on to say, quote, there is clearly a better way the governor could have done this rather than this blanket ban. They could have done something far more narrow.
First of all, 89%, more than 89% of the cases in Michigan are in Detroit, in one place.
Yes.
You can't shut the whole freaking state down because of that.
And even here now in our little county, they've closed down the Home Depots and
Everything.
they've closed down
And
hardware
like nobody
stores.
there's no one here that has
And
it.
even when you go into a store, there's only certain aisles you can buy things from. It's ridiculous. It's
Absolutely ridiculous, and I'm going to tell you something. In a very short period of time, there will be a civil revolt.
It's happening.
Not just in Michigan, but nationally, because this is against the law.
And speaking of that, the Italians are rising up against globalism and European Union over the coronavirus response.
Good.
The Italians are demanding that the country leave the European Union and become a sovereign nation again.
Good.
And they're literally burning the European Union flags
Good.
while
Excellent.
playing the Italian national anthem and posting videos of it all over YouTube.
I call upon every nation in Europe to do that.
And they're saying anti-EU sentiment is now endemic in Italy, and it's starting to take over in other countries.
I know it. Poland hates them. Czech Republic hates the EU. Even France is starting to get against it. They want to get little Micron out of there too.
Now, kind of taking you back just a step back to Bill Gates, because like I said, he's going to be threaded throughout here because it's just amazing where he's turning up. So they're calling him the world's most powerful doctor. That's not a doctor.
But he's not a doctor.
He's not a doctor. So it said, according to this particular article, which happens to be an older one, but it's about him, so it all works. Whoever's in charge of the WHO basically has to report to him because he got United Nations Health Agency in Geneva under his thumb. He is the World Health Organization's second biggest donor.
Isn't that global treason?
The biggest one is the US, and then it says just above that is the UK. So he's the second largest. So whoever runs the WHO has to be in Gates' back pocket, like Tedros, who is backed by the Chinese. So it says that Gates' priorities, whatever those are, which we have been telling you about, that his father was the head of Planned Parenthood, and also I've told you before about Gates that there are interviews with him saying that people ought to be eliminated and overpopulation, they ought to kill people off.
Let's start with him.
So Gates' priorities have become the WHO's. And few people dare to openly criticize him because he gets rid of them. And that's what I think happened to the Kennedy girl.
I'm sure
young
of it.
woman.
I'm sure of it.
The foundation's focus is on delivering vaccines and medicine rather than building resilient healthcare systems. And in January, 30 health advocacy groups penned an open letter to WHO's executive board protesting against making the Gates Foundation an official partner of the agency because the Gates Foundation gets funding or has investments in companies that are at odds with public health, such as Coca-Cola. They own Coca-Cola. And you mentioned this Dr. Michael Ryan, who said we should take people out of their homes, so I don't need to go into that.
I'd like to spend a little time with him alone.
And I also mentioned about this, and you as well, you were talking about reports of domestic violence, and I have Indiana that reports of domestic violence have increased, have spiked, and in France they rose 32%. So you've already covered that. Now the Surgeon General here in the U.S., Jerome Adams, said there's light at the end of the tunnel. So if Americans do this, the right thing is stay home until the end of April. So we've talked about from dark to light. We'll see what happens. And Fauci, who we said is a puppet of Gates, says that we must find a vaccine for coronavirus, not to be a threat, but that society will function again. So they want to say you have to stay home until you've taken your thing.
Chip in it.
Now, in the meantime, while all this is going on, the U.S. Appeals Court has given Trump the right to resume federal executions. Now, that was taken away. Only states could, the federal can't. Now the federal can.
I have a list for them.
And so we've talked about the arrests and the indictments and so forth, so I'm wondering what's happening with that. In the meantime, there were 4 inmates that were scheduled for execution by lethal injection, all convicted in federal courts of murder, that this will be carried out on. So now we know the federal government can resume federal executions. And,
that's interesting.
Yeah. And Bill Barr indicts 8 people for illegally funneling foreign money, this is what you were talking about, to Adam Schiff and multiple Democratic senators. The list of Democratic organizations taking this illegal money is astounding. Almost every Democrat state organization and many super PACs, including the big one, Priorities USA. This includes Adam Schiff, Ted Lieu, John Tester, Cory Booker, Hillary Clinton, and so forth.
Yeah, well.
And one of those is George Nader, who's a key witness in the Mueller investigation, and Nader is a convicted child molester. So we're going to see what's going to happen with that. Nader works as a straw man for the Middle East sheikhs, and it's clear he was to influence certain members of Trump's team as well as the entire Democratic Party establishment. So lots of big things going on here. And in Malta, there were orders to seize almost 30 million pounds of assets, British pounds, belonging to the Vatican Bank. Apparently, this marks the latest developments in an ongoing court saga started by the Vatican Bank, which tried to renege on a 25 million pound investment obligation, which was entered into in 2013, only a few weeks before the unprecedented resignation of Pope Benedict XVI. And then when Pope Francis came in, he led to major changes within the Vatican Bank. So lots of things are being stirred up because nobody challenges the Vatican unless they think they can win.
Well, the Vatican's doomed.
I have another Vatican story. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep on going with some of this. It's so fascinating to me. This is actually off-planet, that Russia accuses Trump of planning to seize planets. Remember, we now have a space force. So Russia accuses Trump of planning to seize planets with a space mining executive order. So we're going to mine, but what we're really going to do is seize the planet, which you never know.
Hope I get one.
Yeah, then you could be emperor of that planet. And I could be impressed, right? You could be impressed. Russian Space Agency says Trump's order damages the scope of cooperation and says that the U.S. does not view space as a global commons. So that was interesting. And then NASA revealed its plans for Artemis Base Camp, which we've been talking to you about, on the moon, that will become home to 4 astronauts in 2024. That's not very far now, as they gear up for their first public trip to Mars, right?
They're going to have a lot of company when they get there.
Apparently. Okay, back to my favorite person, the Pope. This one I've already reported on. Okay, the Pope. Now this, I think, is a really great story. This is probably my most favorite story of everything.
Well,
and just before Easter, Pope Francis drops Vicar of Christ title in the Vatican yearbook. In a surprise move, Pope Francis has dropped the historic and essential title Vicar of Christ from the 2020 Pontifical Yearbook, the Holy See's annual directory, relegating the title to a footnote, calling it a historical title. In previous yearbooks, he's always been listed as the Vicar of Christ, and the name of the reigning pope is under that title. This year's annual directory simply lists the name Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the name of the man who became Pope Francis in 2013. And it's all, you can see it. It's not just somebody making it up. There's actually pictures there. Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, former prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, called the change theological barbarism. It's a long article. In 2006, this one you'll especially like, I'm going to go back, but this ties in. In 2006, Pope Benedict made a change to the usual presentation of the Roman pontiff in the Annuario Pontifico when removing altogether the papal title Patriarch of the West. And what do we know about Catholic Church of the East?
It's the real one.
Okay, and so he took this off Patriarchal of the West. So they had it on the West, which is, so they were at this point saying there is an East. Now they're saying there's a West. They took that off. Okay, now moving on with our friend Jorge. The Vatican watchers were stunned when he dropped the Vicar of Christ because he used his own name, which fulfills the prophecy of the Antichrist, John 5:43. Former papal nuncio, Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, has called the dropping of Pope Francis's essential title, Vicar of Christ, from the 2020 Pontifical Yearbook as an act that appears to officially alter the papacy, such that the Pope no longer recognizes him himself as guardian. This change in the layout and content of an official text of the Catholic Church cannot be ignored, nor is it possible to attribute it to a gesture of humility on the part of Francis, which is not in keeping with his name to do so. He said it's now views him, this Archbishop says it's now as if Pope Francis now views himself as becoming master of the Church, free to demolish it from within without having to answer to anyone. In short, a tyrant, but now officially. Roman Catholics from deep within the Vatican are sounding the alarm bells today because Pope Francis is once again doing wacky end-time stuff. What Pope Francis did is a prophecy of the Antichrist.
Exactly.
This is not the first time that Pope Francis has asserted authority in his own name. It happened back in 2015, and there's a video if you want to watch this, when he addressed the General Assembly of the United Nations. And he said, thank you for your kind words once again, following a tradition by which I feel honored. The Secretary General of the United Nations has invited the Pope to address this distinguished assembly of nations in my own name. That's the key word, in my own name and that of the entire Catholic community. Now, what's interesting about this, a couple of things. It says that Pope Francis no longer needs the phony historical titles of the Roman Catholic Church. He comes now instead in his own name of Jorge Mario Bergoglio as he prepares to fulfill the prophecies related to the Antichrist and the whore of Babylon over which he is the king. Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, former prefect of the congregation, which I mentioned, called the change theological barbarism. Now, here is the kicker for everybody. The original video is on there, and this man, this was from 5 years ago. The writer of this article says, on a shocking side note, and something I totally missed 5 years ago, in the first 10 seconds of this video, the camera is focused on the face of Bill Gates staring back at us. When you think of all the nastiness that Bill Gates is up to right now concerning ID 2020 Event 201 and the coronavirus pandemic, it becomes quite chilling indeed. So Bill Gates is like threaded through all of this.
You know, I wish they could kill him
Absolutely amazing.
I wish they could kill him, bring him back to life, and then kill him over and over and over.
Remember what I tell you, is it wasn't him, it was somebody else. So
Yeah,
somebody's got to
him.
play the part. Point is you've got to take care of yourself, your own mind. Remember what we've told you, the methylene blue, which we've got 3 different products for you to choose from. The vitamin C powder, which interestingly enough, which I have plenty of, but somebody asked me about my vitamin C, and when I went to look up the link, it's like at vitacos.com is where I get mine. Right now, it's all out of stock because you need to be doing your work now, not in the middle of some crisis. So when this is over, don't forget about it. Keep going. Build your health. Get your books. Do your studying. Take care of yourself. Build your mind patterns. We have plenty of things, as I told you, Stuart and I have worked for decades, researched for decades, this Lifeline and a billion others, to bring you this information so that you can take care of yourself, so other people don't pull the wool over your eyes. This isn't just things that we know about. These are things that you can know about, and not just believe, but know. We teach you how to know from within yourself. So with that said, there's nothing more I can say, really.
Well, the virus, as I told you, is artificial. But under any circumstance, it is automatically replicated within the body. Look at my previous podcast for the details on that. I also have it in my previous blogs. You must take zinc. Try to take 50 to 100 milligrams daily. Break it up over 1 or 2 doses. that opens up the pathways to allow the methylene blue and quinine to enter into your system and destroy the artificial virus creations.
And the quinine you can get from tonic water, which we told you before. Now the only thing is, because it's not something we normally have, but we've been looking at these, and a lot of the quinine or the tonic waters have in them high fructose corn
Try
syrup.
to get an organic version.
Or one without. We actually found some at a liquor store that has sugar in it, which is better than
Cane sugar.
which is better than high fructose corn syrup or saccharin. But under also any circumstances, just ask it to be blessed. Pray to your source, flood it with violet, and take what you need to take for yourself. But we have all kinds of health and healing books. And this isn't about believing what we're telling you to believe. This is about you finding out who you are and knowing who you are and building your immune system so none of this affects you. You can walk through the valley of death and it's not going to affect you. So with that said, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And get a membership, expansions.com. And please stop sending us videos because we each have 5,000 members on our Facebook pages and we are inundated with all your videos that you think we ought to watch. We can't. We don't have the time to watch them all.
I don't need to know what so-and-so said. I already know what's going on.
That's right. We have our own sources. That's one. And two, remember, we have a Q&A blog on our website, less than $1 a day. If you really want our opinion and you value our opinion, get a membership. Because we're not going to answer you online. Again, if all of you are asking us questions, there's absolutely no way that we can even sleep if we spend all our time answering our Q's and A's on YouTube. And just because your comments get posted doesn't mean we agree. So remember that as well, because somebody will post and somebody else will answer and they'll keep on going and all these little things.
We're not here to argue with you. We're here to tell you what we know. You could take it or leave it.
That's right. And what you think you know may not be what you think you know. So we know what we know. It's on our website. It's in our videos. You can ask us questions over there. Then everybody can benefit, not just one person. That's selfish at this point. I'm sorry, but you need to think about that. So get your membership. So like, comment, subscribe, and share. And we will see you next week.
And a happy Passover and happy Easter. And hopefully next week we will have even more wonderful news.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.